I'm Paul Wood. I'm also known as The Street Tree, and I'm the author of a book called London Street Trees, which is going to be coming into its third edition this year, which is very exciting. And as a way of marking that, the publisher and I thought, what street tree does London not have yet? And we came up with the idea that a lemon tree. There were no lemon trees planted on the streets of London, probably for good reason. In the past it hasn't been warm enough, but we thought we could put a change to that. We could improve on that, and here it is, London's first ever lemon tree planted as a street tree. And here it is in Garden Walk in Shoreditch. Hopefully later this year it'll be covered in lemons. So I'm really pleased to be here with Divya today, who is Fruity Walks.
Exactly. I have a page on Instagram called Fruity Walks, and I find fruit trees in the city of London.
So we're hunting trees all over, probably in the centre of London, around the city. And I was very pleased to be able to show Divya a fruit tree that she probably didn't know about. That's because true. It only got planted last week. And here it is. This lemon tree has been sitting in the Tree Musketeers Hackney Tree Nursery at Hackney Wick for about 3 years. It was originally bought by Graham, who's the publisher of my London Street Tree book. Because of COVID and all sorts of things, it never got planted. And then finally, last week, we managed to plant it. And here it is, London's first lemon tree planted on the street in Shoreditch.
Usually lemon trees will bloom around the whole year.
Yeah.
Mainly around February to May, but they can bloom around the whole year, and then it takes them 12 months, 1 year for the fruit to develop and be ripe.
Okay, so we could see flowers this year.
We definitely
still. Could. You were telling me about the one in, is it Rule Road in Southwark, which sounds like it thrives. So.
Absolutely, it's around 3-4 meters high.
Yeah.
It is incredibly resilient. It's been there apparently for 30 years.
Yeah, wow, 30 years.
Very mature tree. It was originally brought by somebody from Cyprus.
Yeah.
So really a beautiful story of somebody that came over to London, back from Cyprus, wanted to bring something back from home.
Their homeland, yeah.
Their homeland. And that lemon tree just flourished entirely, and it's most of the year just covered with lemons. Amazing fragrance. It is really remarkable.
Oh, this is another jujube. Oh, they've got two. That one's got loads of fruit on it. But this one is unusual because it has white flowers instead of pink flowers. And it's the only one I know with white flowers. And it sort of adds to this street, which is the hipster tree street, Rivington Street. And as we walk down there, we've been past the pineapple guava, the white flowering Judas tree, and next is one of these giant, or becoming giant, olive trees as well. Olive trees were maybe 20 years ago were thought of as being far too tender to plant in London, but now they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Exactly.
I wonder if the fruits ripen though.
They do.
They do.
They do. In certain streets, they do.
Yeah.
There was a walk that we did around Marylebone area, and the trees around there really get huge olives. As well in Southwark, as well, I've seen a beautiful olive tree that ripens like huge black olives. Oh, there are some little tiny crab apples there. Exactly. The last ones left from last year.
I think it might be a Siberian crab apple. Oh, and you can see that this one's had its cage removed. Oh, there's a nest.
Yeah, there was a beautiful nest here, we were thinking. And some of these wishing bracelets that I've seen pop up in a couple of trees.
Apparently, I heard these were mostly people from Eastern Europe. It's a tradition that they tie it on the first tree they see flowering in the spring. Yeah. All these rare fruit trees within 100 meters is remarkable, I think.
That is a true fruity walk.
It is, isn't it? That's hardly a walk, is it? That's just a kind of a stroll, a hop, yes. According to Hackney's tree officers, these are the most nicked trees in London.
For good reason.
Yeah.
They are beautiful.
Tuna sinensis, or Chinese cedar. And these are trees which have only been planted for the last 2 or 3 years. This one's a multi-stemmed one, so I don't know quite how big they're going to get, but there are suddenly quite a lot of them being planted around. It's called flamingo as well, that's the cultivar name, for good reason. Hackney is my favourite borough for street trees because it has the most diverse array of trees. And as we've seen in this little area, all these very interesting different trees, some of which I don't think you would find anywhere else in London, like the lemon tree, for instance, as a street tree, I hasten to add.
Exactly.
But there are lemon trees in people's gardens, as you've said. But I think their attitude to street tree planting has been experimental, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. Really encourage them to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Get closer to people, get all of these trees closer to people.
Yeah.
And everybody to know a little bit more about street trees and trees in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, we're just arriving into the city. We're just walking past Liverpool Street, and my peripheral vision cuts out anything which isn't real, I think. And Divya managed to spot these orange trees, and on closer inspection, we discovered they're plastic. I don't know, what do you think about the plastic trees, Divya?
When I first saw them, I got very excited, not knowing that they were plastic trees from afar. It was in the summer, beautiful weather. I was like, oh my God, amazing find. In closer inspection, you come to realize that they are plastic indeed.
Yeah.
It's a shame, to be honest. We don't need any more plastic. There's so many amazing greenery, fruit trees that grow in the city. It's a lost opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to be putting
It's true.
Here.
And do you think if they'd been a bit more imaginative, they could have actually grown real orange trees here, which would have had real beautiful orange fruit?
I think so, especially having seen the lemon tree today and the other lemon trees and grapefruit trees in London. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, and of course, here we are right in the city, which has the highest concentration of the urban heat island. So the climatic conditions in this very, very urban part of London are probably the warmest, mildest that there are anywhere in the UK, possibly. So it seems to be an ideal location, perhaps.
I think we should pitch to somebody in the city.
But I didn't start noticing until I started researching my street trees book, which I started in 2016, I think. So it was then that I started really noticing these trees, new trees which were going in. And it's remarkable when you see them after, that's 8 years, I guess, how much they've grown. And during that period as well, trees which have been planted since 2016 and how much they've grown. So like those olive trees on Rivington Street.
It's really wonderful to see the difference and to see the evolution of the trees starting quite small and then suddenly year by year by year get bigger and bigger. And it's something that people aren't that aware of still. Like people are walking from A to B and they miss a lot of the greenery. And it's always trying to find ways of connecting people back to actually seeing the greenery in the streets. It's a process, but I think people are more in tune with nature these days and get to see it a little bit more.
I think as well there's this idea that you can plant a much more diverse array of trees than perhaps at one time people thought was possible. And I guess that's also a reaction to climate change, in that the environment or the climate within cities is very different to that outside the cities. So you need to have trees which are more resilient. Hence we have trees which some people might think are very exotic, but actually they're probably more resilient than some native tree species that really won't survive in these much more arid and, not that it's arid today, but much warmer and more harsh environment than perhaps it once was.
Yeah, and predictions are only predicting that it's going to get hotter and hotter, and it's a resilient method for the city. We need to up one the climate, or else we're going to see a lot of dying trees. I didn't realize this was here. They keep rotating them year on year.
Oh, okay. Well, they're quite cleverly attached to the branches as well, aren't they?
Very nice ceramic fruit.
Do you think they're bird boxes because they've got holes in? Anything lived in them. So we were just reading the panel, and they were conceived as nest fruits. So they've all got holes in, and they're insulated inside, and have drainage holes as well. So the artist was hoping that birds would nest in them. I don't know whether I can see any evidence of that, but it's a lovely idea.
It is a lovely idea. I love that they called it phantasmologic. What was it? Phantasmagorical fruits. Phantasmagorical fruits.
Definitely phantasmagorical. And lovely to see them on a ginkgo as well, which is looks like it's been thriving in this little corner. I'm suspecting this is a male one, so it wouldn't have any fruits on it, just because 90% of ginkgos planted in London are male.
Well, the City of London have resolved that. They put
That's
their
true,
own
yes.
fruits.
Yeah. The acceptable face of fake fruits.
Exactly.
St Magnus is chiming, and that must mean that we're close to the headache tree. And in fact, there it is. And I promised Divya that she won't be disappointed by this headache tree, despite its alarming name. My understanding is this is also known as the California Bay, and it comes from the west coast of the United States and has been used for its medicinal properties and culinary properties by Native Americans. So we're going to test out what those properties might be.
Well, it is beautiful. It's sort of like on an arch. It's arching it.
Yeah. I don't know how old it is. They don't get very big, these trees. When the camera wasn't running, I climbed up to the top of the tree and got one of these leaves from the California Bay or headache tree, and we're going to test its properties now, and I'm going to crush it and we are going to smell it. Without crushing it, you can already smell quite a herbal smell. Oh, that's intense. That is very intense.
Are you feeling a headache coming?
Oh, yeah.
It's quite like cinnamony.
It is, isn't it? It's strong. It's very strong.
It's very strong.
Wow. So, yeah, you wouldn't want to smell that too much. You can imagine a lot of those could be quite headache inducing, although just one, it's sort of sweet and not unpleasant.
It's true.
Yeah.
There's so much greenery within the city. There's so many different parks. There's so many streets in most of the streets. So many trees in most of the streets. Whilst in Spain, when you go there, there's just like a big park in the center, and then the other parks are quite small. Trees are very small. You don't get to see humongous trees. So overall, there is a lot of greenery here that might inspire people a little bit more. There isn't that much, so you don't really notice it or take it. Speculation.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. We could have a long discussion about that.
Yeah.
But the tree I wanted to look at is the one which you can just see the branches over there, but I think we'd get a better view if we were a bit further up. So this bit of land was a graveyard for one of the City of London churches, which has disappeared, and I think that disappeared before the Second World War. But we can get in and have a closer look at the tree, because it is quite something. Amazing thing here is that date on the fence, 1712. Could this tree be 1712? I think it's unlikely, but it's certainly very large. I mean, I don't know how many hugs this tree is, but it's quite a few. There is some speculation that it was here in 1803. I've seen an illustration around that period which shows a tree in this spot, which is quite a bit smaller than this. So it could be 18th century, so it could be over 250 years old, which is very, very old for a tree in the centre of London, I think. But it's a remarkable landmark, and we were looking at the buildings, which are very low rise, particularly for the city, and it seems that this tree has determined urban planning decisions and has stopped the buildings growing up. So the tree has precedence over the buildings, and I like that, and I'm sure you do too, Divya.
Such a win for nature.
Yeah. So the Wood Street or Cheapside Plain.
It's beautiful.
I actually call it Poor Susan's Plain.
Poor Susan.
Yeah, so there is a poem by William Wordsworth which talks about, it's called The Reverie of Poor Susan, and sadly I can't remember it line for line, but it talks about a tree that sings on a bough of a tree on the corner of Wood Street, and he wrote that poem in about 1800, and I speculate that the bird that he was talking about was perched on a branch of this tree. But, you know, I could be wrong.
That's a beautiful story.
It is, isn't it? I also have a book that was published in 1920 called London Trees, and there's a photograph of this tree in that book, and it looks almost the same in 1920 as it does today, so over 100 years ago. So I think it is very old, but it's so difficult to actually determine how old plane trees are. So London planes are hybrids, and the Latin name, Platanus cross hispanica, suggests that the hybridization occurred in Spain. That hybridization is between two plants of different different regions. One's from Asia and one's from North America, and those trees met because human activity humans brought them together. Mm-hmm. And that only happened sometime in the 17th century when humans were beginning to experiment with that, and it probably happened in Spain or southern France. So London planes are no older than 450 years old. But Oriental planes, one of the Asian parent species, can live to 1,000 years old. So we don't really know how long a London plane will live. And the London plane is a bit of a myth as well, because they only became known as London planes in the 19th century when we'd been planting them in London so much. But actually, we'd stolen them from Paris. Yes. I've probably told you that story in the past. I do repeat that rather too much.
It's a great one.
There's going to be lots of film of us walking on this.
I guess it is a walking week.
That's true. This is a willow-leaved pear, which has little tiny hard pear fruits on it. You can see the graft mark on that as well, where it's been put on. So I think this will be a standard pear. This is the cultivar, which has this weeping habit. But I think they're very old-fashioned, these trees, I think.
It's sort of like an umbrella.
Yeah.
You really feel protected
Yes,
under all of
yeah.
this canopy.
Yeah.
I mean, I find grafting just like magic.
Yeah.
When I found out how grafting was made and how essentially you're mixing two different trees in one, and wow, it's fascinating.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. No, I don't see any oranges, but the flowers are abundant. I never realised it. I don't think I've ever seen it at this time of year.
Yeah, I've never noticed.
It's very pretty, actually. Oh, I didn't smell them. I meant to. So the Latin name is Ereobotria japonica, and it comes from Japan, like the Japanese bitter orange, and it's called loquat, but I think it probably has another name. It's a tree which has been grown in Mediterranean regions for many, many centuries, so must have arrived from Asia over, many hundreds of years ago, because it is a familiar tree in many places, and loquat is such a not a Japanese name. That's very much a sort of biblical name almost, I think. Well, that's the end of our tree hunting journey this morning. The weather forecast didn't quite live up to expectations, but it was a very interesting morning.
We experienced everything.
We did, didn't
rain,
we?
The sun, to wind.
A typical London day, in fact. So, well, thank you, Divya, for showing some interesting insights into all these amazing fruit trees that we've seen. And I think we saw all sorts of fascinating trees that we hope other people will want to hunt for themselves in the city of London and Shoreditch.